Hello and welcome to today's episode of Fly to Freedom. I'm delighted to introduce Benedict James Beaumont, who is a breathwork facilitator, a teacher and founder of the International Breathwork School Breathing Space. It is his mission to light up the world with breath. Benedict, welcome.
Hi, Julia. Thank you so much for inviting me on to your show. I'm absolutely delighted to be here.
I think that this is going to be an incredibly helpful episode for my listeners because I just think you have an awful lot of knowledge to share, which is going to just be wonderful. But let's start with some random icebreaker questions.
Actually, before we start with some random icebreaker questions, can I suggest we stop, pause, and just take a few breaths together? Would that be all right with you?
That's a great idea. Yes. Would you like to lead that?
Sure. And if you're listening at home or in the car, join along with us. Maybe don't close your eyes if you're driving a car, but otherwise, we're just simply going to take a few breaths to come into presence with ourselves and each other's. So if it's right for you, close your eyes. Maybe place a hand on your chest above your heart. Just take a few breaths to come into presence with yourself. And then when you feel present, open your eyes and take a breath with me and Julia. Imagine you're sitting with us. And we're imagining we're with you right now. Thank you.
That was wonderful. Thank you. What a beautiful start to the episode.
Well, Julia, this is something that is a really simple breathwork technique and exercise and life hack. I do this. I stop and I pause and I take a breath before almost every interaction I have, whether it's a seminar or whether it's a workshop, whether it's an interview like this, even with my partner. Especially if there's a difficult conversation or a challenging issue we discuss. I even do this with my accountant, who is not into anything wellness, but every single person understands the value and the importance of stopping, pausing, and taking a breath. It's a really wonderful practice. And if there is one thing that everyone could take away from this episode, is to perhaps stop, pause, and take a breath as often as they can.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And before I record any episode or go onto any coaching call, I do actually do that myself before I open up the call. So
amazing.
Become present with myself and just make sure I'm in this moment and not thinking about anything else so that I can show up as the best version of myself.
Yeah. Why don't you try it next time? Actually doing it with a person you're with. Takes a little bit of vulnerability to step into that space, asking someone to share a breath with you. But I promise you, it really changes the energy in a room. And I've never had anyone refuse to do it with me in thousands and thousands of breaths that I've taken with people now.
Maybe I'll do that. And as my listeners have all heard, don't have any excuse not to.
Sure.
So, yeah, maybe I will do that. So, what is actually the best piece of advice you've ever been given, as you've just given a beautiful piece of advice to all of us?
I think the best piece of advice that I ever heard when I became a wellness practitioner, I suppose, is that people will come to you because of what you do. Mm-hmm. And that might be breath work like it is for me, but before it could have been meditation, or it could have been Reiki or massage, but they will stay because of who you are. So they will come to you because of what you do, but more important than anything else is who you are. And that idea of actually really owning who you are and that being such an important and valuable part of whatever it is that you do as well, the being rather than doing, I think has been a game changer for me.
Absolutely. And yeah, being yourself, not who you think you should be or who you think other people want you to be.
Perfect.
Because no one can be you better than you, hey?
No, exactly.
Um, what is your favourite sound in the world?
My favourite sound, that has changed quite a lot. I'm going to be really cheesy and corny at the moment. And I'm a very proud father. I've got a 3.5-year-old daughter. And when she laughs, um, I think that is my favourite sound at the moment.
And so it should be. It's one of the most beautiful sounds, especially when they're doing a real belly laugh. It's the sound of
Yeah,
joy, isn't it?
it is. Yeah.
What's the worst job you've ever done?
The worst job. Well, what appeared to be the worst job was actually one of my favourite jobs. I was a lavatory attendant on Brighton Pier when I was a teenager, which definitely had its drawbacks. You know, I had to clean up a lot of terrible messes, but I actually really enjoyed it. I'd have to get to the pier sort of around 6 o'clock in the morning, and the sun was breaking at that time. It was over the summer. It was a really hot summer in the very, very early 90s, 1990 or 1991, I think. I'd loved going down there. I'm very proud to say we won the Armitage Shanks Eastern Division for the cleanliest public toilet whilst I was working there. And that's still, those certificates are rarer than hen's teeth. And that's still one of my favourite achievements.
Epic. Oh, I absolutely love that. Well done. Brilliant. Celebrating you for that. When you were a little boy, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A lorry driver. Because I knew even then that I wanted to travel and to see the world. But my mother, who was very ambitious and a very a very academic, and she'd worked really hard to get out of the working classes, viewed that as a very working class job, and there was no way I was going to be allowed to be a lorry driver. So that got squashed out of me very quickly, sadly. The travelling didn't, but the lorry driving, who knows? Perhaps I'll go to it in a few years' time.
Amazing. Traveling is something that I'm just starting to feel the desire to do now after so many years of just existing and an eating disorder. Now I'm actually living my life and I want to see the world. I want to see all the different things. So I wouldn't have understood that need before, but now I really get where you're coming from. Okay, two more questions. One completely random. Do you have a party trick or is there a party trick you'd like to have?
I've got a couple of party tricks.
Well,
one I can't do right now is I learnt to read tarot cards because I wanted to impress people at parties.
amazing.
The second one is a bit gross, but I learned to blow saliva bubbles that float around in the room.
Yeah, that is
as a party trick.
Cool,
and the second and the third one is one that was really, really good when I was young, actually, and it was a great way to initiate physical contact with people, especially with members of the opposite sex. Is that I have an incredibly large hand span.
Okay.
One of the biggest, probably the biggest that I have ever met. And I'm showing you on the camera here, but if I can get my little finger and my thumb in exactly the same plane, and that alone.
I can do that.
No, it's because I learned to play the piano very young. I think very, very big. My hands in general size aren't big, but the hand span I have is huge.
Wow.
And there'd always be a follow-up joke. You know, people with big hands, they have very big gloves.
Yes, absolutely. Totally. And last question for the random questions. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and make one thing happen to yourself, to the world, to whatever you chose, literally your choice, what would you choose?
Okay, well, right now, and this is just for right now, I would wave a magic wand that made everyone want to passionately care about 10 meters of untended ground, to take away all the rubbish that was there, to plant beautiful flowers, to cultivate it, and to turn the world in which we live in into a garden.
That's beautiful. And yeah, if everyone did 10 meters, it really would, wouldn't it?
Mm-hmm. Wow. It really would.
I love that. Okay, so on with the podcast.
Thank you for those questions. I've never done a podcast interview with 10 random questions like that, and I really enjoyed them.
Just kind of helps us get to know each other a little bit and kind of just breaks the ice, doesn't it? So, well, first of all, what is breathwork? I mean, we're born breathing, don't we? Right? We're born knowing the first thing we do in this world is take a breath. Why do we need to be taught it? What is it?
Well, it's the last thing that we do as well, and that breath is with us every single moment of our lives. But what if our breath was more than just an automatic thing that we do to keep us alive? What if our breath was the secret to unlocking all of the potential and light within us, and we didn't even realize it? Wow. Wouldn't that change things if we had this gift with us all of the time and we hadn't realized it? Well, I was fortunate to realize that it can be. And I was even more fortunate to train quite rigorously in how to do that. So breathwork is essentially very simple. It's becoming conscious and aware of how and why we may be breathing, and then using our intentionality to do something with our breath. Whether that's some kind of exercise to help with our physical well-being, perhaps our fitness and performance, maybe to help something deeper down. For instance, emotional regulation, if you're feeling stressed, anxious, or overwhelmed. Perhaps it might be something even deeper. Breathwork is astonishing for trauma release, where energy is stuck in your body if you're carrying around old wounds or stuck in patterns of behavior that no longer serve you. Breathwork is the most amazing tool for mental clarity, for getting ideas or for inspiration or for dropping into your imagination. But breathwork can go to even deeper places. Breathwork can unlock access to dimensions of existence that we only maybe touch in our dreams or in some of the deepest meditation states. And breathwork is a very, very spiritual practice as well. Breathwork is mentioned in every religious book, is part of almost every religious practice. Everything begins with our breath, and it is the quickest, most powerful tool for divine connection that I have ever experienced. So breathwork is essentially very simple. It's about breathing, where we take that breath and what we do with it. That is something that can sustain us and nourish us throughout every single breath of our lives.
Absolutely, like mind-blowing, honestly. Something that we all take for granted every day, and yet it is our life force. I'm absolutely so excited to learn more. So, how can it help my physical health and well-being?
In so many ways. Breath is one of the things that happens automatically. We don't even have to think about breathing, but yet we can also control it. And it is one of the main ways that we take in nourishment, not in terms of the food that we eat, but in terms of something essential for our well-being, oxygen. And of course, letting go of carbon dioxide, which is a byproduct of respiration. Now, if we change how we breathe, if we breathe in a more optimal way to improve the efficiency of our respiration, it will have a huge knock-on in almost every system within our body. Because believe it or not, most of us breathe incorrectly. We don't breathe in a way that is particularly healthful. And I'll give you an example of this. Most of us chronically breathe through our mouth, and we over-breathe through our mouth. Now, our mouth is designed for eating and speaking. And of course, in an emergency, or if you're using it for a particular exercise, it's for breathing as well. But it's our nose that is designed for breathing. And there is so much equipment inside of our nose to improve our respiration, from filtering the air, from getting rid of all the dust particles, to sterilizing the air so it doesn't have any harmful pathogens in it. Nasal cavities also moisturize the air. So when it enters our lungs, it is the right humidity for oxygen exchange. It also adjusts the temperature of the air. So it is the same ambient temperature as our body. And of course, then there is even more efficient oxygen exchange. And because the nasal cavities are so like a maze, it flows down the air as it enters our lungs and allows again the oxygen to exchange more efficiently. So we can breathe through our mouth, but it isn't the best way to do so. Breathing through our nose will improve so many different aspects of our physical well-being, from helping with the just helping illnesses. Because of the filtering and the sterilization of the air, we are far less likely to catch a cold, for instance, or catch a virus if we breathe through our nose.
That makes sense.
But it will improve the health of our lungs, everything else. So that's just one aspect of breathing through our nose. Does that answer your question?
It does. So when I used to be completely obsessed with exercise, that was part of the eating disorder illness, I did some work on breath work, and that told me that I should always breathe through my nose. And it's really hard. Like going for a run and trying to continue breathing through my nose for the whole run. I actually felt like I was going to suffocate.
Yeah, it does. Would you like to know the technical explanation for this? Because this is another really amazing and very counterintuitive aspect about breath work, about nose breathing. So you're right. There's two times in our general existence that we usually breathe through our mouth. One of them is when we're sleeping, and for many people, our mouths will just drop open and we'll breathe through our mouths. And the other time is when we're exercising, and natural inclination there is to open our mouths and pant to try and get more oxygen into our body, but actually the opposite happens. There is something called the Bohr effect, B-O-H-R, named after Niels Bohr, who discovered this amazing fact. Everyone thinks that carbon dioxide is a waste gas. When we exhale, we're exhaling carbon dioxide. And if we exhale through our mouth, especially forcefully, we exhale a lot more carbon dioxide. That makes sense, doesn't it? You're following that?
Yeah.
Okay. But here's the magic thing. Carbon dioxide is essential for respiration. Oxygen can only be transported around the blood system on the red blood cells in the presence of carbon dioxide. The more carbon dioxide you are able to tolerate in your bloodstream, the more oxygen will be delivered to your cells. So the less carbon dioxide you blow off during exercise, so keeping your mouth closed, means there will be more carbon dioxide in your blood and more oxygen will get to your cells. So it's really difficult because the need to breathe is not actually triggered by lack of oxygen in your blood. Everyone thinks, well, I'm running low in oxygen, I need to breathe more. Actually, that's wrong. The need to breathe is something that is triggered by an area in your brain called the pons, and that measures the amount of carbon dioxide in your blood. So by exercising and building up a lot of carbon dioxide, your brain is screaming, you need to get rid of this carbon dioxide. However, if you can train your body to tolerate high levels of carbon dioxide, and you're right, when you start running or exercising with your mouth closed, just breathing through your nose, for the first 3 weeks, usually, it is excruciating. It is really difficult.
It is really hard.
Really hard. And the amount you can actually do is probably about a quarter. So if you could run a mile, you could probably run a quarter of a mile. But after you've gone through this process of about 3 weeks, suddenly everything changes. And your body tolerates more carbon dioxide. You've trained your body. And your respiratory efficiency goes through the roof. It's a little bit like altitude training. Essentially, it's the same thing. You're training your body to respire at a more efficient rate. So if you can get over that hump, if you can train your body to tolerate higher levels of carbon dioxide in your blood, as if your blood actually what happens is your blood gets slightly more acidic. If you can train your body to tolerate that, and it's harmless, it's not there's no danger with this, your fitness and your performance increases beyond what you can imagine. It's just changing the way you breathe is a simple thing to do. It's not changing diets, it's not taking regime, but for every single person, whatever your fitness level, even if you're an elite athlete, your performance and fitness can be improved by stopping mouth breathing during exercise, because it's improving the respiratory efficiency and the rate that oxygen can get to your cells to turn into energy. Does that make sense?
It does. So essentially, I should have just kept practicing then.
Mm-hmm.
Done shorter bursts without thinking I was going to die.
Yeah. Tape your mouth when you exercise and just do short little bits and then take it off, recover and do it again. Tape your mouth at night, and the quality of your sleep, the quality of your daytime energy will be improved really drastically. Good
to know. Taping your mouth at night.
Mm-hmm. You can get it's called myotape. It's very cheap. It's only about a pound for a pack of 100 of these little tapes. But you can use just sellotape. I used to. Any kind of tape just to keep your mouth closed.
Okay, I understand that there's these things that we can do to help us breathe better. Why don't we naturally do them if it's better for us?
Well, one of my favourite authors on breathwork is a guy called Patrick McCowan, and he's well known for researching mouth breathing and nose breathing. His theory is that the modern society it's obviously been amazing, but there's some things that have really not helped us. So many of the modern, inventions to make our lives a little bit more comfortable are actually not serving us. One of them, central heating or air conditioning if you're somewhere really hot. That's not us naturally adapting to the environment. That's us creating an artificial environment. Mm-hmm. And with central heating, our natural inclination to cool off is to mouth breathe. Also, processed foods, which have got high levels of salt and other additives, encourage us to mouth breathe rather than nose breathe. But he lists a whole number of environmental factors that has developed as our culture has developed in sophistication that has not encouraged us to nose breathe. He's done research in where they've studied skulls from people from 200, 300, 400 years ago. And he says that their nasal cavities and their mouth structure indicates that they breathe much more through their nose, for instance.
I've heard about this because of the chewing.
He says over time, people, yeah. And he says over time, our jaws, our mandibles have actually started to change shape and they started to recede. And he backs that up with research into societies that aren't quite so developed as ours, and he's where they don't have air conditioning or processed foods or central heating, and he says they're predominantly nose breathers there. There are some cultures that would really train their youngsters to only nose breathe. There's some of the the North American original people that would make through a rite of passage for their youngsters. They would make them carry a mouthful of water for 4 hours across a barren stretch of land, and just to prove that, and then they'd have to spit out the water on the other side to show that this was something that they could do. They could only nose breathe. So it was actually considered a rite of passage in some different cultures to train their youngsters to do this.
Wow. I've heard about mothers putting their hands over babies' mouths to encourage them to breathe through their noses.
Mm.
Interesting. So tell me, I mean, most of my listeners will be living in the panic zone a lot of the time, in survival mode and catastrophizing, worrying about things all the time, and really not being anywhere near as present as they'd probably like to be, because living with an eating disorder generally means living in fear. So how can breathing help with that?
Well, really powerfully. And Julia, I just before we dive into this, I just want to just take a breath here with you. And clearly you have been on your own journey with this for a long time, and it has motivated you to bring a little bit of light and hope, maybe some tools that can help people. And I just want to honor and acknowledge why we are here right now and talking about this, for the amazing work that you're doing. And for all the people who are listening right now, who are struggling, who are in a dark place, I would really, if it's okay, can we just take a few breaths to just honor and acknowledge them
Absolutely.
before we do anything else? Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, Julia, for what you're doing here.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
So there's a few things that I'd like to share with your listeners. First of all, a couple of, should we say, band-aids or emergency exercises or techniques that you can do if you're feeling suddenly anxious or overwhelmed, or you get triggered into a place of fight or flight or fear. Breathwork is very powerful for emotional regulation. Breath's one of those very rare things that will happen automatically, and yet we can consciously control it. Now, I'm sure all of your listeners will know that when you get triggered, your breathing changes. It will change pattern. Often we'll start panting or breathe through our nose, or sometimes the breath will freeze in us and we'll find we're unable to breathe.
I always hold my breath. Always held my breath when I was panicked, and sometimes for ages, and I didn't even realize I was doing it.
It's so common. And if you can bring some awareness and some intentionality to how you breathe, if you can control your breath, your inhales and your exhales, and either bring some regulation to it or just breathe if your breath is stopped, that will send a signal to the rest of your body, to the rest of your internal systems, that maybe you do not need to stay into that sympathetic, nervous place of fight or flight or freeze. Maybe you'll be able to just gently come out of that space by concentrating on your breathing. Does that make sense?
It does.
Now, would it be a good time to not just talk about breathwork, but perhaps if I shared a couple of techniques about how powerful this can be?
That would be absolutely wonderful. Really wonderful.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to do, and we'll do this for about 5 minutes, and there are no contraindications to these exercises. If you're driving, just go very gently. You can do this whilst you're doing other activities. I, for instance, used to do this when I was doing the washing up, but just go very gently. We're going to do 2 breathwork exercises that are related. They both involve counting your inhale and your exhale. The first one is called coherence breathing, and it is the simplest technique. I do it multiple times a day. All we have to do is match the length of the inhale to the length of the exhale. That's it.
Simple.
We'd match the length of the inhale to the length of the exhale. And it doesn't matter whether you're doing a short inhale and a short exhale or a really, really long inhale and exhale. You find a rhythm and a speed that is comfortable for you. Once we've done a few rounds of coherence breathing, I'm then going to lead us into some box breathing. Now, box breathing is like a bit more advanced version of coherence breathing. It is also matching the length of the inhale to the length of the exhale, but we're also putting in 2 breath holds, one at the top when we're full, and one at the at the bottom when we are empty. So the inhale, the hold, the exhale, and the hold all have the same length of time. And I think it best if we just lead from one into the other. Would that be all right if we spared 5 minutes of our conversation together to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's do that. Right, give yourself a little shake and come into stillness. If it helps, you can close your eyes here. But we'll all take one long, slow inhale through the nose until we're full. And then we'll exhale fully together until we're empty. Now let's begin. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 3. Exhale, 2. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Inhale, exhale. Now for the next minute, I want you to count yourself. Inhale to a count of 4. Exhale. So on the next inhale, I will stop. Inhale, you're on your own for a minute. Exhale, off you go. That's it. Keep breathing. Fifteen more seconds. Now, wherever you are in your cycle, I want you to take a deep inhale until you are full. And then exhale gently through your nose, and we're going to move straight into our next practice of box breathing. Okay, let's begin. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold empty, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3. Hold empty. Inhale, hold, Exhale. Hold. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. Hold. Now for the last minute, you can do this by yourself. Inhale. Hold. Last round that I will speak. Exhale. Hold. 1 minute by yourself now. Inhale. There we go. 1 more minute. Fifteen more seconds. Wherever you are in your sequence, inhale through your nose until you're full. Then exhale gently through your nose. If your eyes are closed, gently blink them open. And just let your breath return to a more natural rhythm. Just check in with yourself right now. How do you feel different? What's changed inside you from when you started this practice? How do you feel now? How do you feel, Julia?
I feel very connected with myself. I feel peaceful. I actually feel my posture changed as well, which is interesting. It got easier. The holding seemed, I know it was the same amount of time, but it felt less.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just feel very present, very connected, and very peaceful.
Mm-hmm. It's all of those things I know intimately, and they still have that same effect on me after doing this for years and years. Every time I do this, I feel relaxed and calm. I can feel my posture changing. I can feel more connected with myself and with the people that I'm with as well. There's no contraindications to this, and because you can change the speed or the length of the count of the holds, it's safe for everyone to do. It is one of the most powerful and yet one of the most simple techniques that we can master. So if there is something as a takeaway, a little bit of first aid, a bit of breathwork first aid that your listeners can take, I hope they found those 2 exercises useful.
I can't imagine anyone not finding them useful. And another thing that has just struck me is that my mind didn't veer off to any other thoughts whilst I was doing that. It just remained completely present and focused on my breath.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very cool because minds have a habit of going off in all directions, don't they?
Well, this is just the start. That's just opening the door to where breathwork can take you. If we've got time, maybe we'll do something else that will help you go even deeper into that place of stillness and quiet and kindness and love and strength and wisdom inside as well.
Because all the answers to everything we need to know is always actually inside. We spend our lives looking for answers, looking for external validation, looking for validation that we're doing things right, that we're on the right path, that we're okay, when in actual fact, all of that is inside us. The stuff that we need to feel good enough to feel connected all comes from within.
It does. So and our breath can help us access that in all the most beautiful ways.
So I'm curious, how does the pausing, the holding of the breath, I mean, it's clearly very powerful, but why?
Well, I can answer that on different levels. Physiologically, as we pause our breath at the top and the bottom, we're changing the levels and the amount of carbon dioxide and oxygen in our blood. And that starts just gently edges to our window of tolerance. Now, I'm sure that you know, if you want to find balance with something, you don't just stay still. Actually, if you want to be balanced, you stretch your arms out really wide. And it's the same with anything. If you really want to find stillness and balance in the middle, you need to go to your edges. So physiologically, by putting in breath holds and taking our bodies slightly, out of the normal ranges for the carbon dioxide and oxygen tolerance, it brings us into so much more stillness. Energetically, putting pauses in is a really powerful moment of stillness. It brings our whole body back into equilibrium when we give our bodies just a regular place where they recognize that they can be still. It's like putting a brake on our brain for a few moments, both at the top and the bottom. It is such a beautiful practice, and those people who practice breathwork regularly often report that it's almost an ecstatic moment when they hold their breath in a way that accesses some of the, deepest parts of our unconscious mind. It can be blissful when you just almost enter a state of deep meditation where you're hardly breathing at all.
Wow. That's not something I've experienced, but I think I'd probably like to.
I'm sure you're not alone with that one.
So one thing you mentioned is that breathwork can actually help release trauma. How does that work?
Trauma is such a powerful concept in understanding how and why we act and behave and respond as we do. When we experience trauma, which is from either a real or a perceived threat to our existence, energy can get stuck into our body. Now, often that is related to how we're breathing. You mentioned earlier that when you get triggered, your breath freezes. And actually what happens there, the emotional energy from that experience gets stuck in our body. Now, most people associate trauma with war zones or deep physical trauma, but it doesn't have to be. Even a parental figure of authority telling us off when we're young, or a teacher humiliating us, or a loved one criticizing us can also cause deep trauma to us, especially if it is repeated, especially if it happens again and again. These energetic wounds stay within us. And of course, I know that you and all of your listeners will have experienced some of the chronic conditions that can arise from unresolved trauma in our bodies. And, eating disorders, is just one of them. There are real physical effects, diseases that will manifest if trauma is not treated in our bodies, if it just chronically increases. Simple things from backache, or shoulder strain, to diseases such as cancer, or organ failures, or arthritis. All of those can be as a result, in my opinion, of chronic untreated trauma and stress in our body.
Any inflammatory illnesses, isn't it?
Any inflammatory illness, anything can cause that. So understanding trauma and getting over the idea that I haven't been in a war zone. I don't have a right to feel trauma, which is another way of trauma exhibiting in our body. We get imposter syndrome that we can't do it, but actually recognize that trauma doesn't have to be caused by huge life-changing physical experiences. It can be an emotional or a mental experience.
Yeah, trauma is not the event, it's how you perceive the event, how you react to it, your response to it, rather than what actually happened. And so something that, if you and I shared the same experience, I could find it traumatic and you could enjoy it. So it doesn't actually matter what the experience is, it's what we take away from it, how our response is.
Perfectly explained there, Julia. So breathwork can help release that stuck energy in our body. And it's an amazing practice because unlike talk therapy, you don't have to understand what's going on. You don't have to put all the pieces together. Our bodies is this most amazing piece of engineering that actually has the ability to heal itself. The problem is we don't really drop into the wisdom of our bodies very much. No. We get stuck in our head. We're always thinking ahead or worrying about, but if we give ourselves the space and the time to drop into our bodies, actually they know what they need to do. And all animals have this ability. Humans are the only ones that actually suffer from trauma or stress. Most other mammals, give them the chance, they will shake it off. And literally they can shake it off. There's some amazing videos of deer who've been captured by lions and they play dead. And they're called, in these videos, the lion gets scared off and the deer just suddenly gets up, shakes it off, shakes all the stuck energy off and carries about its day without any ill effects. But when we do breath work,
cortisol levels and stuff, and it's gone. Everything's gone. They've shaken everything out. It's incredible.
It is incredible. Now, our breath has the ability to access those places of stuck emotion and help our bodies process them, release that trauma, get rid of that stuck energy without our conscious mental mind having to really understand the process. Mostly what I teach and facilitate is something called conscious breathwork, which is an extraordinarily powerful breathwork technique. I call it plant medicine for those people who don't want to take drugs and end up puking into a bucket for hours and hours and hours. But it has that life-changing, transformational power that can change your life in just a few breaths. It happened to me, and I have led thousands and thousands of people through the same experience since then. And it can help people recover from lifelong addictions, or people who have been stuck in grief for all of their lives, or been stuck in a place without being able to feel any emotion. It has the potential to bring great physical healing. So conscious breathwork is extraordinarily powerful for releasing trauma because it accesses the place where the trauma is stored. Now, the exercises that we did earlier are really to help you get it out of the sympathetic nervous system, the fight and the flight, and the freeze kind of response. And they'll drop you into your parasympathetic nervous system, where you'll rest and digest, where you can feel calm. However, if you really want to shift the stuck energy, there is no amount of coherence or box breathing or feeling calm or meditating that will get rid of it, because you're in a completely different system there. You're in your parasympathetic system. If you want to access and remove and process the stuck emotional trauma energy in your body, you have to go back to that place of sympathetic activation. But here's the thing. Normally, when we experience that sympathetic activation, we are in a threatened position. We are in a perceived life-threatening situation. So it is a matter of life and death. It is a matter of survival. What happens in a conscious breathwork is we enter into that state, but in an extremely safe environment, in a place where we feel relaxed and where we feel absolutely secure. And when we go into that sympathetic activation, but we are absolutely at rest and feeling safe and secure, amazing things can happen. We drop into that state of wisdom in our body that naturally knows what it needs to do. And our bodies will just process all of that stuck traumatic energy just naturally. We don't have to do anything. Now, it sounds simple.
It does.
Getting into a place of deep trust and safety, and then entering to that space of sympathetic activation. For many people, and I suggest that this might be for some of your listeners, actually feeling safe in your own body is actually really difficult.
Yes.
Because for so many people, feeling safe in your own body isn't easy. And so that's why breathwork is such a powerful, if you can find a good facilitator that can help you access that. And it might not be the first time that you do breathwork. It may take 3 or 4 or even 5 sessions before you truly are able to access those places of that need that deep healing, that need to be made whole again. But when you do, it can be like a miraculous recovery. And I say that with confidence because I've seen it happen to so many people, and I have experienced it myself. Does that give a little bit of background into how this works?
If I say you took my breath away, would that be corny? Yes. That's exciting. And why doesn't the whole world know about it?
Well, I'm doing my best to spread the word, Julia. I really am.
Honestly, there's so many things, isn't there? There's just giving ourselves permission to be ourselves and just learning to love who we are, to be who we are, to treat ourselves with respect and love and kindness. And take the time, the self-care moments to stop, to breathe, to check in, to do all these simple things that don't take long, are not that difficult, don't cost lots of money. Breathing, we can practice that again and again and again without having to pay out for lots of equipment.
We don't have to wear funny clothes or follow a diet or chant things in a foreign language, in a strange language, or twist ourselves on a yoga mat. Do we have time, Julia, to perhaps do another little breathwork exercise just to give the tiniest taste of the power of breathwork to drop us into that space?
Hang on. Yes, I think we can probably just squeeze one in. What we will do, if it's okay with you, is have that to wrap up this week's episode. So just before we go into it, how can people find you, learn more, work with you?
So I founded a school called Breathing Space. If you Google my name and breathwork, you will find me. The website is Make Some Breathing Space. And why I come onto podcasts is because I'm passionate about breathwork and its healing and transformative powers. And so if you do anything, just making friends with your breath and starting to develop that relationship is all that I would wish for. If you like me, if you like my energy, then I would love to work you in all sorts of ways. We offer that. We offer 5 free workshops every single week online via Zoom. You just come along and you turn up into the Zoom room, and there is always a facilitator there to lead you in one of these conscious breathwork sessions. So that's the first way.
Oh, wow.
We've also got a lot of free courses and exercises that you can do on our website, little taster courses that you can try with and learn some of the basic techniques. If you would like to go deeper, if you would like to really explore your breathwork, then we have a 12-week transformational breathwork program called Rewire, which is this 12-week journey, I believe, is what changed me and took me from being a humble secondary school teacher in the south of England in never having achieved very much to suddenly opening up a breathwork school, an international breathwork school, and running retreats all over the world. I have no idea how that happened, but I claim that it was because of this breathwork program that I did. So I created it. I've recorded an awful lot of videos. But anyway, if your listeners would like to explore that, I'm going to give them all a special code that will give them a big discount, a third off the price for that. So,
Wow.
it's not for what it is and the amount of work and effort they're going to. It's still very cheap, but there is a price point to it. But I do try and make it accessible to everyone. And then, of course, if you really feel inspired by breathwork and you wish to go on the deepest journey and you wish to do what I do, which is lead people in breathwork in these transformational spaces that will, of course, help your own light grow into the world, then we train people to become breathwork facilitators as well. My vision is to bring breathwork out to everyone, and I can't do that alone. I can only reach so many people. I can only do so many podcast interviews. I want leaders from all sorts of communities with all sorts of backgrounds to step up and to lead others into this amazing practice out in the world as well. So if that calls to you, we also offer training to the deepest level.
Amazing, exciting, inspirational, and so needed. So needed. So before we close with this other breathwork, thank you so much, Ben, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and your passion for what you do with us. It's been breathtaking. It's been wonderful. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. And I hope lots of people do take you up on contacting you, reaching out, following the links that I'm going to put in the show notes, and just connecting with you and with themselves and with their breath. So thank you so much. You've been an incredible guest.
Julia, thank you.
And listeners, at the end of this breath work, I'm just going to close the episode. So I'll see you all next week. Thank you. Let's go for it.
Okay. So please only do this exercise with us if you're in a still, quiet space where you'll be undisturbed for the next few minutes. And please only do this exercise if you're seated or lying down. Give yourself a shake. Settle back and close your eyes and breathe gently in and out through the nose. And as you breathe, I want you to become aware of your body, especially how it is moving as you breathe. Your chest rising and falling, perhaps your belly expanding and contracting. How where you're being supported in your hips, and your shoulders and your back and your feet and your hands, how that moves as you breathe. Now bring all of your awareness and intention to the sensation of the air entering and leaving your body, cool through the nose. Bring your focus onto that sensation. On an inhale, take your awareness deeper inside to that still, quiet place within. This is a place of wisdom and strength and love. As you breathe here, just feel it. This is a place that your wisest, truest, and highest self resides. That's it. Now, in a moment, we are going to change our breathing. But before that, I want you to just listen to the answer that arises in your heart to the question I'm about to ask. If it was time to let go of something in your life, what would that be? If it was time to let go of something in your life that is no longer serving you, what would that be? Now we are going to do 1 minute of conscious breath work. Please only do this with me if you're in a safe position, seated or lying down. Open your mouth wide, really wide, as if you're taking the bite of an apple. Start taking full body breaths with no pauses at the top and no pauses at the bottom. We'll be doing this for 45 more seconds. I want you to breathe fully and freely, as deeply as you can. No pauses at the top and no pauses at the bottom. Take as much of this amazing air and energy inside your body. 30 more seconds. Breathe it all in. As deep and as free as you wish to go. 15 more seconds. 3 more breaths. Final breath. Now, when you've exhaled, close your mouth. Breathe through your nose and put some pauses in. And just be still for a moment. And just feel the physical changes in your body. Maybe the blood pumping around your body. Maybe the feel of your heart. Maybe changes of temperature. Maybe tingling, perhaps a dry throat. As those physical sensations start to subside, let's just return to that question. If there was something in your life that it was time to let go of, something that no longer serves you, what would that be? And as you reside in this place of stillness, if there was a message that you needed to receive right now, some words that you needed to hear, let that message appear to you right now. Let those words come to you from that place of wisdom and stillness in your heart. What are the words that you need to hear right now? And when you're ready, start to bring a little bit of movement back into your body. Perhaps stretching your fingers, moving your shoulders. Maybe wrapping your arms around yourself and holding yourself in a hug. Or stretching out wide. You could blink your eyes open, look around the room that you're in. Perhaps tap gently on your body, your fingertips. Now, if you wish to explore this a little bit further, now is an excellent time to journal, to write a little bit, to just reflect on that very, very short taste of breathwork, and to really explore the message that you received and the words that were spoken. Thank you everyone for listening today, and thank you, Julia, for asking me on. Let's close with a final breath together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. That was beautiful. And thank you, listeners.